Hi everyone, welcome to our right-click tools, hardware and firmware audit dashboard. I'm Scott, and before we get started, for those of you who are a little bit newer to Recast software, I'll give you a brief introduction about what we do and kind of our goals. We have three main pillars of right-click tools. The first would be to improve productivity. Those of you who use our enterprise or our community tools know that we have tons of shortcuts to save hours on pretty much any job. Actionable insights is our second pillar to quickly surface data, focus on compliance levels, encryption, and stuff of that nature. And finally, it would be powerful automation, automating those simple tasks and creating single action tools to get all of that done as quickly as possible. These are a few of our customers. As you can see, we have customers in just about every industry. I'm sure if you look, you'll see customers in your industry. Today, we'll have Mark Godfrey speaking about the hardware and firmware audit dashboard. He's one of our software engineers. Then we'll also have Marty Miller, who's our customer success manager. He will be handling the Q&A portion. We will be recording this webinar. It will be on our YouTube channel afterwards, on our blog, and will also be sent out in an email early next week, so keep your eyes out for that. And we will be keeping an eye on the chats in YouTube and in Zoom if you have questions, and we can answer them there or at the end of the webinar. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark, and he can get going.
Thank you very much, Scott. If everyone will give me one moment to quick transition over to my screen here. All right. So as Scott already mentioned, today we're going to talk about the hardware and firmware audit dashboard. This is actually relatively new. It actually started out back in, I want to say November. We released it as the hardware audit dashboard. And that was always with the intention of adding some more capabilities to it in the future. We might even add some additional items to this going forward, but here we're going to show you the current state of it. So the purpose of this thing is pretty simple and straightforward. I'll get into the actual specific use cases in a moment, but the purpose of it is to know what you have. You can't manage items you don't know you have. And I'll specify configuration manager is not an asset management system. That being said, none of the organizations I've worked for have ever had a dedicated good asset management system, and all of them have actually used configuration manager for it anyways. That, and if you do have a dedicated asset management system, most of those will actually sync and pull in data from configuration manager to help ensure correct information and whatnot. Anyway, so there are multiple different use cases for this. The first one I want to talk about is hardware refresh time. You probably have a specified hardware life cycle in your environment. Maybe 3 to 5 years is the most common I've seen. And once that time comes around where a piece of hardware reaches, or a model specifically reaches that end of life, you have to start ordering replacements. And it's hard to do that unless you really know what you have. And this can actually let you surface what individual models you have, who's using them, so on and so forth, so you can get the correct counts and get those ordered, plan and coordinate with your users so you can get that done. The other big use case, there's actually multiple use cases, but Windows 10 feature updates. So there are a number of ways this ties into that. One is compatibility. When you're ensuring to do your Windows 10 feature updates, you want to make sure that you might have like specific issues with specific models. And so you can kind of identify those models, so you can either add them to like an exclusion collection or a collection with extra pre-flight checks or some remediation collections, so on and so forth. The other thing that I always like to talk about during Windows 10 refresh time is it's a great time to fix issues that you may not have fixed previously. I know a lot of organizations, when they first migrated to Windows 10, they really didn't switch over to using UEFI over legacy BIOS along with Secure Boot. And Windows 10 feature update time, you're already kind of interrupting the user process. It's not a bad time to fix that. Yeah, you can't do just a regular update. You have to actually do a full reimage to switch those over. but it's still a good time to do that. It adds a little more time, but if you're going to be interrupting the user for a significant amount of time anyways, you might as well get it done then. So this can help you identify the status of those, and then again, put them in collections or however you want to identify or segment those so you can get that done. The other big thing that I like to mention is whenever you're doing Windows 10 feature updates, you really should update your firmware beforehand. And some of that's for compatibility, some of that's for taking advantage of a lot of the cool security features Windows 10 has. You might have heard the term virtualization-based security. There are so many security features in Windows 10 that rely on this, and all of them have firmware prerequisites. Not only that, but you might not be aware that some of these items, they actually enhance with additional build updates. You have additional capabilities, but you can't always take advantage of these additional capabilities unless you're updating your firmware. For instance, I implemented Credential Guard back in, was it 1607 or something like that? Well, they've made numerous updates to Credential Guard to make it stronger, and unless you're running on the latest firmware with your newer builds, you're not actually getting those increased capabilities. So it's always good to get those updated. So I'm going to quick show you how to use this dashboard. What you see here is basically the default you'll see when you first open it up, and you'll want to select a collection to scan, whether it's all systems or whatever collections you have, and just go ahead and hit scan. And it's going to scan your whole environment, pull in your data, and whoa, someone's making some changes to my environment. That's interesting. One moment. Okay. I don't know who's been changing the environment, but something's wrong here. Anyways, so I think someone's populating some fake devices, and we'll have to look at that in a moment. But anyway, so what you'll see here is you'll see 3 different pie charts by default, the chassis, manufacturer, and model. And you can actually dynamically select up to 3 additional charts or deselect some of these if you don't want to see them. So you got chassis, manufacturer, model, UEFI status, secure boot status, and BIOS version. If you're just wanting to determine the models, then you might want to use this. You can actually click on either the legend or the section of the pie chart, and it'll update the data grid below to show you what you have. You see all this? And then you can also drag and drop these, but that's not super useful in this mode. That's more when you have nested filtering enabled. So say you have you have like 10,000, 50,000 devices in your environment, you might have 100 different models, and that's going to make it very difficult to read this pie chart if that's the case. So you can turn on nested filtering and click on, say, just your desktops, and then just your Dell desktops, and then you can see just the Dell desktop models in your environment, for instance. Furthermore, you can, let's pull up some of these charts. Say we want to look at BIOS version. We got BIOS version, UEFI, secure boot, and let's get rid of some of these other items. So they're wanting to just see this by model. All right, so we've got all these different versions. We got UEFI enabled on most of these. And we got secure boot enabled on most of these, at least the real devices, not these fake ones that someone's trying to populate. All right, so, and if once you identify these, you can either select one or more, add them to a collection to run actions on these, or you can just kick off the remote software center if you already have it deployed, and then just go ahead and run that BIOS update. You can also, if you like, export this data to a CSV. The little export to CSV button down here, it'll ask you if you want to only update or export the filter data, or if you want to export all of the data, and they'll just give you a file dialog to save that. Then you can import it in Excel. You can give it to your manager if you need a report from them or your security team or whatever. A couple things to note on this. So by default, it's going to query the model from Win32 computer system. It's all pulling this from Configuration Manager hardware inventory. By default, if you have, say, a Lenovo's actually have a not so friendly model name in Win32 computer system. So you want to make sure you have Win32 computer system product being inventoried. If you're not sure how to do that, you can just go over here into your, collapse this, in your client settings. select the item. We'll go into hardware inventory, set classes, and we'll just check this item right here, Win32 computer system product. Likewise, we are using Win32 baseboard to help with the HPs. So you have HPs in your environment, I'd suggest checking that as well. This will give you an error message if you aren't using those. It'll still function, but it won't give you the most friendly of model names when that happens. So you might have some other use cases for your environment for this. There's just numerous ones, right? Knowing what you have is key for just many actions you might need to take. So if you have ones or other questions, please share those in chat or questions in Q&A. But for now, I am going to hand you back to Scott to talk about some of our other webinars in the future.
All right, 1 second while I get my screen up. All right, is that working for everyone? So we've already had 2 dashboard webinars, the Active Directory cleanup, which was also led by Mark, our software update deployment status webinar, which was yesterday. Both of these can be found on our YouTube channel and will be posted with our blog and coming out with email shortly. We also have 2 more dashboard webinars next week. On the 27th, Wednesday, we have our CTO, Chris Muster, going through lapse compliance. And next week, Thursday, on May 28th, we have Mark again going through BitLocker compliance. So obviously, thank you to Mark. He did great today and with Active Directory, and he has another one coming up. So big thanks to Mark. And again, these will all be coming out with recordings. For questions, we have Marty Miller. So I will give the microphone over to him and the screen back to Mark. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, thanks, Scott. My name is Marty. I'm a customer success manager here at Recast Software. If you do have any questions about the hardware and firmware audit tool, we can absolutely answer those for you.
All right, I'm going to apologize. I think Marty actually might be having some internet connectivity issues or microphone issues. I couldn't hear him and confirmed with some others. No one else can hear him either. So I'll go ahead and step in here. We're just going to do a little bit of Q&A. If you have some questions about this tool, by all means, we'd be happy to answer them here. So you have, would there be any advantage to using SIM versus WMI query? Well, actually, by default, this is going to use WMI right now because it's all going through our product, and that's just the way we're querying it. We do have something behind the scenes where we're actually adding support for using SIM or WMI, and you'd be able to basically choose what you wanted. That's not 100% implemented yet, but it's something that's probably going to be coming in the near future. And there actually would be advantages to that. WMI can be a little more difficult to allow through firewalls, through network firewalls anyways. When you're talking Windows firewalls, there's actually a pre-built rule you just have to enable. But for network firewalls, it's difficult because when you first initiate a WMI connection, you have like a static low default port you use, and then it transfers over to like a dynamic higher port range. And because it's dynamic, that's hard for network firewalls to really have configured. But let's see, we have another question here. I am new to this, but see a lot of unknowns come up when I run the collections in Recast software. What could be the reason for this? I'm actually seeing quite a bit of this today. I think someone was going through and doing some experimenting in our development environment, which is where I'm presenting from. So it looks a little goofy. I try to use a different collection to make it a little better. But so when it's querying this data, we actually do multiple queries. And by default, a lot of these properties are set to unknown until we pull certain data sets in. So basically it either means that there's no data existing for that object. It could be that hardware inventory hasn't run on it. You don't have permissions to access that data. It could be a number of things, really. If you're an enterprise user, I definitely suggest filling out a support case so we can try to help you out with that. But we also have, if you check out our website, there's a support documentation page that has a lot of common errors you might see and how to fix those. Yeah, Chris is asking about what are the input string not in correct form messages at the bottom. Yeah, that's, I believe, related to somebody was trying to populate fake data in our environment, and because it's fake data, it's kind of messing with the tool. That shouldn't happen in your environment. If you do see that, then definitely let me know. It would be a bug to fix, but you should not see that in your environment. Do we have any other questions we can help answer today? Okay, we got a couple more. Is it possible to limit the inventory view access to different groups? So yes, if you're running Recast Enterprise, you can use a Recast management server, and that can control permissions so that only certain people or groups of people can access certain tools, if that's what you're, if I'm understanding what you're asking correctly. That's actually something I could probably show real quick. I think we have one of those set up in this environment. I'd have to double check. Remember the server name. Actually, I'll probably see the server name in here. That is a lot of fake data. There we go, RMS-prod. Let me try the dev one maybe. Okay, so maybe some of our servers aren't currently configured in this environment. I just need a port as well. Apologies for the wait. I wasn't planning on showing this today. All right, well, I'd have to show you in another environment because I just don't have that up in this one. But essentially, there's a little web portal for the Recast management server, and it lets you go in and configure all those permissions, and you can configure it for dashboards or other tools as well. Can we add command line on this tool to change on firmware like legacy to UEFI? I'm not 100% sure what you're asking on that question. If you're wanting to take actions to convert them, if you have like an application or package or task sequence already deployed, you can run all of our nested tools in here. So here, let's go ahead and add a chart for say UEFI, right? We'll scroll over here. And you can select one or more of these devices and right click and run our other tools like the remote software center. So if it's already deployed, you could find that application or task sequence in here, check it for one or more devices, and then kick it off. And that would, then go ahead and do the conversion for you. Obviously, something like UEFI conversion would need like a full reimage, so you want to make sure user logged in currently, but you can do that way. Next question, did you say computer system product is the hardware inventory class you need to be enabled? So you don't need it. Like, this will actually work. The thing is, Lenovo's actually store their friendly model name, for instance, like ThinkPad T560, something like that, in Win32 computer system product. So if you don't have that being collected in hardware inventory for a Lenovo device, it's going to show the Lenovo model name from Win32 computer system, which is not a very friendly computer name or model name, and it's not super helpful. So what would happen if that's not enabled? It'll show that, and you'll have a little error message at the bottom saying, hey, you don't have this class being collected by hardware inventory on one or more devices, please enable it. Likewise, for if you have Hewlett-Packard machines, I recommend enabling hardware inventory collection for Win32_ baseboard. Okay, do we have any additional questions we can answer?
Mark, it looks like we have some questions in the webinar chat.
Oh, thank you. Let me look here. Can you show how to install BIOS from remote software center? Well, I actually just did that a moment ago. More of how to get the update to be available. We're talking about, like how to get the BIOS update available. I mean, if you're wanting to get BIOS updates available, you'd have to actually download them and package them up and then deploy the things. That's pretty lengthy procedure that we probably won't want to show today, but there are a number of blogs that actually have a lot of that info. One of our employees who also works for Wells Fargo, Gary Block, has a lot of blogs, and I think he has something on deploying BIOS updates through Configuration Manager. His website for his personal blog is garytown.com. Otherwise, you could also just tweet at Recast Software, and we could, I'm sure, find some great blog resources to make that easier for you. Not a problem.
All right, we'll give one more minute for any more questions to roll in. In the meantime, if you guys want a free trial of our Right-Click Tools Enterprise, if you haven't had one yet, you can go to our website, and in the top right corner of any web page, you can click download Right-Click Tools, and you can get a free 30-day trial of Enterprise with everything unlocked. All right, it looks like that is it for questions, I believe. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Mark, for showing us about the hardware and firmware audit dashboard. We have 2 more next week, so make sure to tune in, sign up. They're going to be just as good as always. But for now, thank you everyone for coming.